Hello, welcome everyone to Feeding the Soil to Feed Africa. My name is Julie Howard. I'm an independent consultant on international agricultural development and a non-resident senior advisor at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington. For the next hour, we're going to hear some of the world's leading experts and practitioners discuss why improving soil fertility is a must if we're going to expand food production in Sub-Saharan Africa. They're also going to talk about some of the exciting developments that are taking place that are changing the way we think about and go about improving soil health and fertility. This event is sponsored by the International Fertilizer Development Center, IFDC. IFDC is an independent nonprofit research and development organization headquartered in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. IFDC combines innovative research, market systems development, and strategic partnerships to improve soil health, food security, and livelihoods in Sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, and throughout the world. IFDC joins with the entire community here at the World Food Prize in congratulating Dr. Ratan Lal, the 2020 World Food Prize laureate. And IFDC is extremely pleased that Dr. Lal has agreed to join IFDC's board of directors. The full board will meet on October 27th. And so now to begin our discussion, and just a reminder, we'd love this to be an interactive event. And so I warmly encourage you to add your questions throughout the session in the Q&A box. We'll try to get to as many of these as we can following the presentations. So first, I'd like to turn to our set of panelists, expert panelists. And I'd like to welcome Dr. Erik Smaling of Wageningen University in Research. Dr. Smaling is a widely published expert on soil fertility management, and he's also a Dutch politician. You can read his full bio in the link that was sent to you with the registration confirmation. So we'll hear from him about why both of these perspectives, soil fertility expert and politician policymaker, are helpful in thinking about the challenges and opportunities for improving soil health and fertility. Erik, over to you.
Thank you very much, Julie. And it's an honor for me to be able to contribute to the prize ceremony that we are now all engaged in. I spent part of my life in Sub-Saharan Africa, and as a soil fertility specialist, I have some views on how we should move on in the soil fertility domain. In the first place, Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, will be welcoming a lot more people in the coming decades, and all these people have to eat. That's very obvious. To get that food produced, soil fertility is indispensable. But soil fertility is often seen as a free, God-given, Dieu donné, if you like, good, just like rainwater is. So the fact that soil fertility is not for free is not really shared by people who are perhaps not specialists in the field of soil fertility. Soil fertility is there. It is part of geological history. But as you keep on growing crops and not putting anything back, soil fertility will decline. And at some point, your soil will not be able anymore to support your crops to the extent that you can live from your farm, or that the products that you want to sell to the market are good enough. And what you see is that Africa is basically an old continent. It is billions of years ago that volcanism was prominent in Africa, and it's now mainly the eastern highlands of Ethiopia, Kenya, and some neighboring countries that are still seeing fertile soils from younger volcanism. But in general, soil fertility in Africa is low, is on the decline, and needs to be supported in order to feed the population properly. What you see also is that area expansion, which is one way to increase food production, is reaching its limits. In Ivory Coast, for instance, cocoa farmers have cut most of the rest of the forest that was existing in the southern part of the country, because also they know that the fields that they will then use for their cocoa are fertile because the forest has been there. And there are many other examples where you see that area expansion is really reaching its limits. In Ethiopia, many farmers are at a level of 0.25 hectares for their farming, which is a bottom line. In Kenya, when you drive from Narok to Bomet to Lake Victoria area, in the past you saw Maasai and you saw game, and now you see wheat fields. So that is occurring in many parts of the continent. What is needed from a policy perspective to get fertilizers more prominently on the agenda. In 2006, there was a conference in Abuja, which where there was an ardent plea shared by high-level people to raise fertilizer levels in Africa to 50 kilos per hectare. I think in 2017. We are at 17 kgs per hectare, so we have not met that target. So a second summit may be useful to see if we can, with increased efforts, reach that level. But it's not fertilizers alone. It is also organic fertilizers that need a boost. In many countries, organic waste products are not recognized as fertilizing agents. And it's a matter of norms and regulations that have to be organized at political levels to make sure that this whole bunch of organic remains and waste products that can be reutilized in agriculture are actually valued properly. Many countries are still at the level of blanket fertilizer recommendations, which is inefficient because fertilizers respond to what soils already offer, respond to areas with more or less rainfall, responds more to one crop than to another crop. So recommendations should be area, soil, and crop specific in order to make them also rendering enough revenues to farmers that invest in the fertilizers. Thirdly, it is important that farmers get the right incentives to use inputs and to invest. I mean, for farmers, it's not always a reason to invest in fertilizers when there is no market access, when there is no real reason to increase production because the government, for example, is importing what you produce at a subsidized price in order to keep the urban population happy. So a very clear and targeted and effective response from governments to investment at the farm level in fertilizers, but also in seeds, also in high production varieties, also in crop protection agents, whether it's chemicals or integrated pest management, and in water management is needed to constitute the basis, the natural resource basis for farmers to build on and to make sure that farmers can get a good amount of revenues from their investment in farming. Farmers need cash in their hands. There are many Sub-Saharan African farmers that have no cash in their hands and cannot invest unless these prerequisites, these boundary conditions are really met. And so if a new Abuja summit will take place, it needs to meet a couple of these boundary conditions in order for it to be effective, in order to get to the scale that the previous Abuja meeting has also desired to attain. And therefore, I'm so happy that in this occasion, my good friend, André Bationo, whom I admire so much for his tireless efforts to get the soil fertility management on the agenda in Africa, is our guest of honor today. So with those words, perhaps, my dear Julie, I want to stop my contribution.
Thank you so much, Eric. And I think that that's a wonderful introduction to the issues, and it's also a wonderful introduction to our keynote speaker, who is with us now from Accra. André, can you hear us? We can see you.
Yes.
André, yes? Oh, wonderful. Good morning, sir. Okay, we had a few net kerfluffles this morning, but I think we'll go right into your keynote, André. Let me introduce you. It's my honor now to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. André Bationo, who is this year's Africa Food Prize co-laureate, as Eric mentioned, and one of IFDC's own. Dr. Bationo currently heads the Smallholder Agricultural Productivity Improvement Program, working in Mali, Benin, Cameroon, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Again, you can read his full bio in the link that was sent out with the event reminder. But let me just say on a personal basis that Dr. Bationo is one of these humble giants who's contributed most to our understanding of the drivers of soil fertility in Sub-Saharan Africa. And in addition to this year's Africa Food Prize, his work has been recognized by UNESCO, African heads of state, and he's received the government of Niger's highest civilian award. So Dr. Bationo, we look forward to your keynote address on soil fertility and on-farm productivity. The floor is yours, sir.
Okay. Merci beaucoup, Julie. Et puis, merci beaucoup pour tous les participants. Vous êtes les bienvenus. On est content d'être avec vous. Donc, comme vous voyez, le titre qui m'a été donné, c'est de discuter de. Now I will shift to English. So, feeding the soil to feed Africa, improving soil health to boost farm productivity. We know today Africa is spending $50 billion on food imports, with a population of 1.25 billion. But by 2060, 2.75 billion people in Africa. And it's well known that if we really continue to do business as usual, only 13% of Africa's food need will be met by 2050. Now, when you really look crop yield in farmers field today in Africa, compared to the yield scientists can get on station, you can see that if I take the example of maize in West Africa, in farmers field, the maize yield is 800 kilograms per hectare. But on station, with the use of fertilizer and good agronomic practice, the yield can reach 6 tons per hectare, at least 6 tons per hectare. So it's a huge yield gap. And one of the reasons is really the low use of external input like fertilizer. If I take nitrogen, for example, you can see that every year we are taking from the soil what is lost from the soil in Africa is 4.4 million tons of nitrogen, when we are applying only 0.8 million tons. We agree that this cannot be sustainable. Let me go through the different paradigms on tropical soil research. In the 60s, everybody was thinking what we need is to get farmers to use inorganic fertilizer. We know this was a success in Asia and in Latin America. Although at that time fertilizer were subsidized in Africa, Africa bypassed the Green Revolution as in Asia and Latin America due to the use of mineral fertilizer. In the mid-80s, it was believed that we need to focus more on biological management of tropical soil. We need more we think we can develop by just relying on organic matter. It's the time we were talking a lot about low input sustainable agriculture. And again, we know this didn't work. This has a lot of limitations. Where to get the organic material? In fact, it was if we were able to collect all the manure produced in West Africa to apply to cropland in West Africa, we will be applying only 2.5 kilograms of N and 0.6 kilograms of P. When we know for a good crop of maize, you need up to 100 kilograms of N per hectare. Another limitation is the need for high labor to process and apply. And we know that most of the time is a really internal flow. We are not really adding nutrient outside the farm. Now, in the 90s, we recognized that it's a very extremely important to use both organic and inorganic. We use the inorganic plant mainly for the plant nutrients. And we know that for the soil health, we absolutely need to apply also inorganic. And these those data from long-term trials, if the trials start since 1960, where you can see that from the control plot where we didn't apply fertilizer, we were able to harvest 1,500 kilogram of sorghum. But today, when you go on that control plot, you cannot even harvest more than 100 kilograms of sorghum per hectare. But when we use only mineral fertilizer, you can see that we yield decline is around about 1 ton today per hectare of sorghum. But when you combine both mineral fertilizer and manure, you can harvest today up to 3 ton, 3,000 kilograms of sorghum per hectare. And let's just look at today what we really promote as integration fertility management framework. We know that the current practice, the efficiency, the agronomic efficiency is very low. But with fertilizer, mineral fertilizer, and improved Gen Plus, we improve efficiency. And as I was saying, in addition to that, we absolutely need to add organic resource to further improve efficiency. But when we talk about full integration fertility management, is when we also add the local adaptation. Eric was telling about talking about the fertility status of Africa soil, but because of a lack of volcanic rejuvenation, this has caused the continent to undergo various weathering, erosion, and leaching, leaving soil in many nutrients. Today, more than half of African people are affected by land degradation. If we take, I work most of the time in the Sahara, in the Sahel, where we know that in Africa is burdened by 9.3 billion on annual costs due to desertification. It is estimated that 42 billion in income is lost every year in Africa due to land degradation. When we look at the productivity zone in Africa, the productivity zone, we have the prime land, almost with no constraint. This 9.6% of Africa. The soil with high potential is 6.7%. The soil with medium and low potential is 28%. And it is known that up to 55% of African land is unproductive for food crop. A lot of technologies have been developed on the inorganic fertilizer, rock phosphate, on organic resource management, on N2 fixing grain legume in rotation or intercrop with cereal, on agroforestry, on integrated nutrient management, on soil, water, and nutrient conservation. Many technologies exist, but unfortunately, is with low adoption. One of the important conclusions, as I was telling you, I spent most of my time working in the dry land of West Africa. I think it was two very important conclusions. We came to really realize that fertilizer use drastically increases the water use efficiency of the scarce rainfall. And another very important conclusion, when annual rainfall is higher than 300 millimeter, The most limiting factor is crop production. For crop production, is soil fertility and not water. Like I was telling, we work a lot of rock phosphate. We know very well that 80% of the soil in Africa are short in phosphorus. Fortunately, Africa has 80% of the world phosphate reserve. And some of the rock are good, like the rock in Tawa, the Telepsy rock in Mali. And this particular in East Africa, the Mijingu rock, you can see the strong response to Mijingu phosphate rock by soybean. I will take a few words about a very important success story. It can really help to transform the Sahel region from gray to green. Is the macrodose and the inventory credit system that was tested all over many sites in West Africa. And the macrodose is really a strategic application of small quantities. Most of the time we apply 1/3 of what was recommended in the yield of the target crop at planting. And all over we were able to increase all the crop yield from 50 to 200%. And today, total investment to promote the macrodose and the inverted credit system is about $250 million. And we estimate about 1 million farm families are beneficiaries. This to show you some of the response to the macrodose. You can see on my left is the macrodose. On my right is on sorghum is the farmer practice without the use of the macrodose. You can see for pearl millet, in front, the front is a farmer practice, and behind is the use of a macrodose technology. Before, one way, all the time I was doing my research, and even today, I really work relying. I think it's very important to implement our ISFM research through networking. It was two important networks I coordinate: the West Africa Fertilizer Management Network and the African Network for Soil Biology and Fertility. It's really a win-win situation for everybody, for all stakeholders. It's together the National Research Organization, the CG the scientists, the Advanced Research Organization, universities, both from the north and also from the south. It is a really win-win-win situation for everybody. And we're able to do a lot of capacity building to minimize duplication, to really have a lot of information exchange and increase our bargaining power because of economy of scale and get efficiency in the research. And in terms of information exchange, we publish more than we publish 50 books. And one good thing is you can see one of the books on DESAD, Decision Support System and Agro-Technology Transfer, was translated to Chinese. The Chinese Academy of Science request us if we can translate it. And as you can see that this book was translated into Chinese. So I think myself it was quite a success story. Before concluding, let me just take a few words about the way forward. The first thing I think is really important. We continue our research in farmers' field to further increase the nutrient use efficiency, to narrow the use yield gap I was just only talking about. It's really important we work more on tailoring fertilizer use for mitigation and adaptation to climate change. IFDC recently made a lot of progress on balanced fertilizer products, and we developed the SMART approach, what is soil analysis, mapping, and recommendation, and technology transfer. We really believe that this need to push to really scale up in other agroecologies and develop new fertilizer products that contain not only NPK, but also the secondary and macronutrients. A new research field I really think is very important is the agronomic fortification. How we will use the fertilizer not only to increase productivity, but also to improve the nutritional value, and also how we can use fertilizer to improve the plant health. I still believe we tried in the past, but we still need to focus more on how we can build the capacity of African scientists in modeling. To conclude, from my many years of work on the field, both in West Africa, in the East Africa, in Southern Africa, I have been lucky to work at all those places. I believe there is enough data to think that Africa can feed itself and contribute significantly to feed the world. But to do so, we need to use much more external input, such as fertilizer, but in the framework of integrated soil fertility management. I will just think it's very important that we have a second high-level conference, like the one in Abuja, the Abuja Head of State Fertilizer Summit, to really discuss the successes, the challenges, the lessons learned, and the way forward to increase fertilizer use, to enable Africa to feed itself and contribute to feed the world. In fact, farmers are telling us enough is enough. Any remote village you go in Africa, you will find Coca-Cola, you will find beer, but you cannot find improved seed, you cannot find fertilizer. So farmers are telling us enough is enough. What we need is not only Coca-Cola, but also seed and fertilizer. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bationo. Thank you very, very much. That was a wonderful presentation. Thank you for walking us through sort of the evolution of our understanding of what's required on the technology side, the research and technology side, to improve soil fertility and health in Africa. I'm pleased to see that several questions are coming into the chat box, and we'll address those after the other panelists' presentations. But one of the questions I just wanted to queue up, especially for you, André, not to address now, but in a few minutes' time. Yesterday, starting with former Vice President Gore and Dr. Ratan Lal, there was a lot of discussion about regenerative agriculture. And so I think that from the questions that I'm seeing, people are interested in knowing, what do you see as the potential for regenerative agriculture in Sub-Saharan Africa? Maybe what's the difference between integrated soil fertility management technologies that you've discussed for us here and regenerative agriculture? So I think that will be great. We'll come back to that question after we hear from Alexander and Ruth. But so thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. So next, we'd like to turn to Mr. Alexander Fernando, not yet Doctor, who serves as IFDC's Regional Director for East and Southern Africa, based in Nairobi. And so we've been talking quite a bit about technology, a little bit about policy so far, Alexander. And so Alexander is now going to talk to us about what are some of the innovations and things that we need to watch out for on the market side. What's the importance of market development, both input market and commodity market development? And why is it important for us to think about those markets if we want to improve soil health and fertility, and also to increase agricultural productivity overall? Alexander, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Julie, for the introductions, and good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to everyone in the audience. Let me just start off by saying it's a real pleasure for me to be on this panel with André and the other distinguished colleagues. And as Julie had said, what I'd like to discuss now is spend a little bit of time to explain about how IFDC has scaled productive technologies such as those that Eric and André spoke about in our development programs in Africa. So over the years, on the input side, IFDC has worked with the private sector to provide smallholder farmers with access to these technologies through various programs. These can be things like agri-dealer development, input sector strengthening on both the seed and the fertilizer side, and also working on input financing, such as the work that André pioneered in inventory credit systems. And then to link these to output markets, we have also developed approaches to scale these technologies through agribusiness development. So these are programs that used to be called value chain development. They now take market systems. And then this arc that I've just explained really forms the core of IFDC's new strategy. So first, we start with research in soil fertility technologies. This is then used for smallholder farmers to catalyze productivity on their farms. And then in turn, these farmers respond to the pull of the market. And when we're talking about markets, it's the whole gamut of markets, from processors to consumers. And one of the key points that I would like to make, and that's also something that André and Eric spoke about, is that it's really the pull of the market that makes farmers invest in production. And the reason for this is that improved inputs such as seeds and fertilizers, they can be relatively expensive for smallholder farmers, and they can also be risky to use. So there is work to be done not only in demonstrating that the technology works, but also in making sure that the whole market system functions all the way from producers to consumers. So let me give a couple of examples about how we do this. I'll take two examples. In Burundi, which is one of the poorest countries in Africa, we implement a program called Private Seed Sector Development, which is funded by the Netherlands Embassy. And the goal of this program is to double the productivity and incomes of over 100,000 farming families. And the way it does this is by working with seed companies and seed multipliers to help them expand their capacity not only to produce quality seed, but also to market them. And so this marketing is really a very key component of the project, which I'd like to explain in a little bit more detail. So the project works with seed companies to pilot new ways of branding, packaging, and selling seeds. For example, by working with seed companies to sell seeds in small packs. These are branded seeds under the seed company's own name, which are then sold through rural points of sale. And these can be local shops, they can be agri-dealers, or even the seed company's own extension agents who go into the community in branded vans and motorbikes selling directly to smallholder farmers. So a very important part of this last mile marketing strategies, and I really love the concluding slide that André had, is that they're particularly beneficial in reaching the last mile, and even more so in terms of reaching women and disadvantaged groups who tend to have less resources and also sometimes less mobile. So the work that this project does with the seed companies is also supported by demonstrations. These are installed by the seed companies themselves, and extension agents that are employed by the seed companies will then engage with farmers, teaching them about good agricultural practices. And by these good agricultural practices, we refer to not only those related to seeds, in this case the seed project, but also related to soil fertility and moisture management. It's a whole package of productivity enhancing technologies, as my previous colleagues had also spoken about. So the aim of all of these activities is to profitably raise the productivity of smallholder farmers and to close the yield gap. And as I said, this has to be undertaken through a combination of technologies that are adapted to the farmer's risk profile, but also their particular agroecological profile. And it's only when this happens that farmers will invest in productivity enhancing technologies so that they can sell their surplus to the market. Another example that I'd like to give, not from the seed sector, but the fertilizer sector, is a program that we're implementing in West Africa called André, which for those of you who speak French know that it means fertilizers. And this is implemented through funding from USAID West Africa. So this program works with private fertilizer companies, the Regional Fertilizer Association, and national governments, with the goal of expanding fertilizer supply and distribution. And key to this has really been in increasing the sustainability and visibility of WAFA. So WAFA is the West Africa Fertilizer Association, by increasing its membership and capacity. And WAFA is now acknowledged as the representative voice of the fertilizer industry in West Africa. Also working with Africa, the project has stimulated over $30 million of increased investment in West Africa through contacts with both industry and with government. And also, very critically, it has developed agro-input packages for all of the major crops in all of the major agroecological zones in West Africa. So these are some of the optimized input bundles that we've been speaking about as part of this discussion. And it has also facilitated the publication of regional fertilizer regulations that have been introduced into the national gazettes of the countries in the region, and also facilitated reform of national fertilizer subsidy programs in at least 5 countries. I think one of the previous panelists was also talking about really the importance of having a very conducive enabling environment. So these are 2 examples related to work that IFDC has done specifically in the seed and fertilizer sectors. The third example that I would just like to briefly introduce is one of our agribusiness programs, where smallholder farmers are linked directly from production to processing and then onto consumers. And this example is from a Netherlands-funded 2-scale program that IFDC has been implementing since 2012. It operates in about 8 or 9 countries in Africa, and its key mode of operation is through public-private partnerships. So what do we mean by these partnerships? And I'm very happy that we have an example of one of these partnerships speaking later on the panel. But these partnerships are typically formed between the project with an agribusiness, and this can be an aggregator or a processor. It's basically anyone who has a winning idea about how to develop a more inclusive value chain. And by inclusive, we mean engaging not only with smallholder farmers as producers, but also as buyers of products that are targeted base of the pyramid consumers. So now you'll hear directly from a processor who's been supported by 2Scale, who I believe is our next speaker. But let me hand back to Julie for the introductions. Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much, Alexander. That was wonderful. I think that point that you make is so important, that to ensure that soil fertility technologies and other technologies really respond to the pull of markets, because otherwise we're never going to scale up adoption, because farmers and business simply can't afford to spread technologies that aren't profitable, that don't have some kind of consumer demand. So thanks for that. Well, so yes, Alexander, so next we will turn to our final panelist, who is Ms. Ruth Canote. She's the founder and CEO of Shalem Investments in Kenya. And I love in Ruth's bio, she refers to herself as a social entrepreneur and integrator. I just love that self-description. And I look forward to her talking to us about what that actually means. Shalem, as Alexander mentioned, is a key partner for IFDC's 2Scale program in Kenya. So she's going to give us really the field level view of everything that we've been talking about today. She's going to discuss how all of the components, research and innovation, policies and markets really come together at the community level for farmers and their private sector partners, and what are the challenges and opportunities. So Ruth, we look forward to hearing from you.
Shalem, sorry. Is that better? Julie? Thank you. I'm sorry about that. I coordinate the activities of this business. Shalem Investment is a private enterprise whose core business really is marketing dry farm produce from smallholder farmers. Our approach is that we identify large markets and then we mobilize the smallholder farmers to produce. And we have developed an inclusive business model that has been effective in commercializing smallholder farmers. We contract the farmers and buy their produce at predetermined prices for predetermined markets. As a social business, several years ago in 2012, we received support from a two-scale program that was coordinated by IFDC. And this program actually became a game changer. It became a catalyst for our growth, because through this program, we were able now to link science to the reality of soil nutrition. Like our earlier speakers have said, because of growing populations, the soils have been degraded because of the farmers need to depend on the same land year in, year out. And so through the two-scale program, we were able to train the farmers in a nutshell to practice integrated soil management, where we were able to link the need for knowledge, the need for resources and markets. Because the farmers are more than happy to invest if they can afford it, if they understand why invest, and of course, if they have a market. And we were happy that we could link the farmers to markets earlier on, to breweries and other processors. And with continued support from the two-scale program, we were able to grow into a processor ourselves. So Shalem now processes a dry food dry food produce into milled food flour that is targeting the growing populations of low and middle income earners. And we are truly grateful because for us to address the farmers' need for continued soil improvement, which was a great focus of the program, then we were able to attract other partners who are interested in the farmer, so that it became a network. Through the initial foundation of the two-scale program, other development actors have built on that. We have received great support from United States Africa Development Foundation, who came in to help with the aggregation of the grain that the farmers produce. Again, through this, the farmers can keep their produce for a little longer, then they are able to afford fertilizer for next season. We have been able to work closely with a very effective impact lender, Ruth Canote, who also works around empowering us to purchase produce from the farmers at harvest. Other social leaders and banks have come in to work with groups who, again, we formed through support from two-scale. DFID came in and other development partners. And the issue of soil management remains key, because even as productivity improves, then there is already market or there is demand. Of course, we have been hit hard by the COVID challenge, but again, these structures that were built by the two-scale program, the groups, the clusters, have really been useful in helping the farmers create resilience, because the groups have grown their own money through what we call village savings and loans. So they could loan each other during this time, even platforms that were curated for like bulk messages and other online integrations. All these have really been useful. As a business, Shalem has received huge support from Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, that is GAIN, to help again link the consumer and the farmer, of course, and by extension, the production, which goes down to the soil, so that there's an integrated response to the need for improved soil nutrition. So in a nutshell, the health of the soil really is the health of the populations, it is the health of the businesses, it is the health of the scientists, because all of us really depend on the soil. The youth of Africa depend on the soil much more than on any other aspect of business, because agribusiness has a great opportunity for all the youth. And we are happy that through, again, the IFDC two-skill program, we were able to bring in very many youth, over 20,000 of smallholder farmers in different groups, with about 67% being youth and women. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. So that was really, I think, an important case study for us to hear about. And now I understand what you mean when you describe yourself as a social entrepreneur and integrator. I mean, you really are in the business of knitting a whole lot of different pieces together on behalf of smallholder producers, but doing it in a business-minded sense. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. And so we've got a lot of questions that have come in. I'm wondering, James, if we can put everybody up on the screen again. We're not going to have time to get through all of them, but let's tackle a few of these questions. And I think I can bundle a couple of questions together. So one question that came in view of low productivity and significant yield gaps in many sub-Saharan Africa area, what should be the role of regenerative agriculture in sub-Saharan Africa? And then I think a similar question related question. Let's see. How do we harmonize approaches, technologies, options where recent developments are pushing towards agroecology and nature-based solutions vis-a-vis the need to still apply fertilizers? And what are the constraints for farmers to avail adequate organic resources? So I think let's turn first to André and Eric to tackle that, and Ruth and Alexander, please come in, and there are a couple of other questions I think we can get to. So please, André, Eric.
Okay, maybe let me start, and or Eric, you want to start? Maybe you start. I will just give some example. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just say a few things about it. I think in an ideal world, we could live and eat from regenerative agriculture, and we should mimic natural systems as much as we can. And agroforestry comes close, alley cropping may come close, multi-story cropping may come close. There are many farming systems where you can mimic the natural situation as much as possible. In Ethiopia, we have been successful in scaling up papaya, for instance, and papaya can just be grown on the homestead, so you don't need half a hectare to put a papaya monoculture. And in that sense, it's rather being clever and intelligent with your farming systems that allows you to stay close to regenerative agriculture. But given the population growth, given the rapid urbanization, intensification of the current production is inevitable. So entirely relying on regenerative agriculture, to me, is a no-go, given the challenges that are on the table as far as population growth and urbanization is concerned.
Maybe
You, André?
Yes, if I add, for me, we really need to go with the new approach we are having, the approach we are having on integrated soil fertility management, where we need both. In fact, our farmers, we are the low productivity today. we try to do a type of regenerative agriculture. And we know the limitation. We know the low yield we are having today. One of the, all my experience in the Sahel, what is very important to have to increase biomass at farm level. And I can see that the only way you can increase biomass at farm level is when you also use a little bit of mineral fertilizer. You can have more crop residue. After the competitive use of crop residue for animal feeding and so on, we will have more to cover the soil and protect the soil against wind erosion, against desertification. So we really need to combine both, and there's no doubt in my mind to combine both if we really have to make progress due to the population growth, and both need to go together.
Thank you, Andre. So again, we've got too many questions to handle. I'm going to try and bundle a couple, and I'm going to turn to Alexander and Ruth for this bundle. So one of the questions is, what are the most important issues or possible reasons for the low adoption by farmers of introduced technologies in Africa? And what's the best feasible strategy for us to possibly address this issue? Now I want to bundle that with some of the issues we just heard about from Andre and Eric, right? I mean, so Alexander and Ruth, you talked to us about the importance of having a market for the farmers and having a working system. But some of these technologies that are being discussed, yeah, I mean, it's not obvious that the impact will be immediately recognized in the market. So, for example, organic matter incorporation or cover crops are not something that farmers would be immediately rewarded for by a higher price. So can you comment on that, sort of reasons for low adoption of technologies, and how do we address this complex issue of it's about purchase technologies, but it's also about a shift to regenerative practices, to integrated soil fertility management, and what kinds of things can the market or policies do to make sure that farmers have an incentive to adopt those technologies as well? So Ruth or Alexander, either one to start, please.
I could go ahead and then leave it to Ruth to speak about her case study of some of the farmers that she works with. But this is a really interesting discussion, and I think Eric and Andre in their overview had really presented that raising productivity is really a package of interventions, and these have to be suited to different risk profiles and agroecological profiles of the farmers. And we at IFDC, we firmly believe that it's profits that really motivates farmers. So you have to have a bundle of productivity options, which can include regenerative agriculture. It can also include improved seeds, improved fertilizers, whatever makes sense. But it has to be a package that provides profits to smallholder farmers, because it's only by creating profits where farmers can sell into the market and make a living that they will continue investing in some of these improved inputs so that they can continue increasing productivity. If the technologies don't produce profits for farmers, then they're not going to be adopted. And I think one other factor that really has limited uptake of some of these technologies, and I alluded to it in the beginning of kind of my introduction, is that you really have to work on the whole value chain. It's not only getting the right technologies there, it's also making sure that farmers have access to them at an affordable price, in a package that they can afford, in a way that they can easily implement. And then they also have to have a way of selling their produce to the market. So it's actually really the whole value chain that needs to come together at the same time. And this, in many instances, is quite a tall order, but also what us development practitioners and scientists and of course, entrepreneurs like Ruth are working towards. So let me hand over to Ruth.
Thank you, Alexander. In my view, you have packaged it well. You have responded in a way that I feel I may not have much to add. Just to repeat that there is need for that the completion of all the actors in the value chain being included. And the smallholder farmer would not work in isolation. The smallholder farmer will work best when they are linked to all these actors. And we are so happy that the scientists are coming up to interact with the farmers also, because a lot of scientific findings are just in the shelf. But we are happy that now with programs like what IFDC is bringing forward, then the farmer can interact with the scientists.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I'd like to give all of the panelists and André sort of a final chance, really 30 seconds. What's the biggest takeaway that you would like the audience to go away with? So André, let me start with you, please. 30 seconds.
Well, what I think is what I would like is all of us to be convinced that we need to use the new approach of integration fertility management. And I really believe on networking. I think we used to have in the past two important networks, AFMIN and AFNET. And those are not there anymore. And I think we really need to do anything we can to have a network where African scientists can work together. It's really a powerful way to make progress. So there is and I do believe that at the end of the day, policy is very important.
Great.
The need for another type of Abuja summit for me is very important, because the decision makers will make the difference at the end of the day about if we make progress or if we don't make any progress. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Great. Wonderful. Eric, 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, I think we should look in terms of food systems. We have to learn to look in food system thinking. That's the entirety of the production and the consumption domain, and what's in between in processing and trade and waste management and whatever, to see the clear picture, to see where we need to go between now and, let's say, 2050. And so fertility management and fertilizer use is part of that. So you have to organize the fertilizer sector in such a way that it is effective, efficient, it serves a purpose, and that it's part of a package of instruments that is needed to get the most out of fertilizer investment. It has to be area, soil, and crop specific, and there needs to be a market for those that are buying it.
Thank you. Alexander?
Well, I definitely agree with what the earlier speaker said. I think for me, I'm just going to drive home the same message, is all about farmer profits and having markets function. And I believe that, I mean, governments have a very important role to make sure that the enabling environment is there to support markets and profits, but also to, of course, to protect farmers and to protect the environment.
Thank you. Take it to the farmer, as Dr. Borlaug said. So Ruth, last word to you.
Thank you. Just to appreciate this opportunity to voice the farmers' gratitude that many actors are thinking about us, including those businesses that work with farmers, and it is possible. It is possible to improve our soils. It is possible to improve productivity. It is possible for the smallholder farmers to be commercialized, and it is possible for Africa to feed herself.
Great. Well, thank you for summarizing the discussion. I think it's been a very rich discussion, and all of these issues and the path forward are going to be discussed at the upcoming second Africa-wide summit on soil fertility and health that Eric and André referred to. It's called Abuja 2, following on the first summit, first Africa Fertilizer Summit held in Abuja in 2006. The second summit will be coordinated by the African Union, and IFDC is very proud to be working closely with partners, including the Regional Network for African Policy Research Institutes, or RENAPRI, and the Alliance for African Partnership to facilitate preparations for the summit. The summit's theme will be Meeting Africa's Soil Health Challenge, Agenda for Action. So, and with that, our session today draws to a close. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of your wonderful questions, but we will be sharing those with the presenters. I'd like to thank Dr. André Bationo and our terrific panelists, Dr. Eric Smaling, Alexander Fernando, Ms. Ruth Canote, and special thanks to you in the audience for your attention and good questions. And hope everybody has a good day. Everyone, bye-bye.